I'm Claire Hiett. I'm sure some of you will have met me before. For this week's Who is Bridgend open access workshop, I'm going to be showing you how to make a collage of your subject. It's a really quick, easy and effective way, and the materials are quite minimal as well. So to start off with, I'm going to be producing collages of Mair Gruffydd, a lady who's famous for Mair's walk. So she's quite a local hero in Bridgend town for raising a lot of money for charity. And then Simon Green as well is another one of my subjects that I've chosen for today. He's a disabled rights activist, and I'm sure a lot of you will know Simon as well, because he's a very prominent character around the town and very well known and very well liked and respected. So to start off with, I'll talk you through the materials. First things first, decent cup of coffee. I wouldn't usually advocate having something like this so close to my workspace, but times are hard and needs must. So as long as you're careful with it, it's okay. Then you need a decent head and shoulders photograph. So there's one of Simon and there's one of Mair. These are A4, you could go a bit smaller if you wanted with A5. I'm sure that would work, but I wouldn't advocate getting too small and using too small a photograph, because it can get a bit fiddly. That's not to say though that if you engage with this practice and that you want to develop it a bit further, then great. You can experiment with all scales and colours and all sorts of things, so it'd be absolutely fine. But just to start off with, just to get to grips with the process, A4 or A5 I would suggest. You're also going to need something like a sheet of card or a thickish piece of paper for the base, to use as your base. And I tend to work with a few different colours when I'm doing something like this, so that I can overlay my collage onto different backgrounds to see what works best. Colour's a very emotional thing, and it can say a lot about the subject that you're creating a portrait of. So you've got a lovely warm red, or a fiery red. You've got a cool blue, and that photograph of Simon, he's actually wearing a lot of blue, and it features in Bridgend colours as well, so that's something you might want to consider. Then there's a lovely green, then nice fresh outdoors green. You could just go for white. You could even use a black sheet if you've got it. Just go with what you've got, really. Although I do like to sort of try different colours, as I say, because it gives a different mood. Colours very much associated to the mood of a piece that you make. You're also going to need a decent scissors. I've got this one. It's quite large. Smaller scissors will be fine. Scalpel blade will come in handy as well, although even though this workshop is suitable for all ages, you do need to have a responsible adult around when you're using something like this, if you've got one. You might want a ruler. I find with a scalpel blade a metal ruler is best, because if you slip a little bit with a wooden ruler, you can chip a little bit off and then you lose your nice straight edge. I've usually got a pencil handy. I quite like these mechanical pencils with a little eraser in the end. They're HB, so you get a nice sort of delicate line. You don't draw too hard and end up with pencil lines that you don't want to see, so these are quite effective. And then a Sharpie, other brands are available, like this one actually. Or a black felt pen. You might want to do some sort of outlining, especially if you're sort of developing these collages and taking them into abstraction a little bit more rather than being realistic with them. If you think about Picasso's work, he liked a big thick black outline on lots of things as well, so that's something you could easily use. Then you're going to need lots of papers. There's some nice old doilies there. They're nice for cutting up and collaging. You've got a nice bit of texture and a bit of pattern that you can use. There's some floral craft papers. There's black. That's a piece of black card actually, but I have got some thinner black paper to collage from as well. Brown parcel papers, usually quite effective. All these sort of nice patterned craft papers that you can get. You might have something like an old book that you don't mind chopping up, or magazines or newspapers, or anything that is disposable basically, because you are going to be cutting it up and sticking it down and using it in a way that it's not designed for. Okay, so we've established what materials we need. Next thing you need to do is to deconstruct your photograph. So you're cutting out each sort of part of the picture so that you've got different components for different papers. And then you carry on with each bit so that you're left with all the major components that you need for your collage. Now this is where the scalpel blade comes in handy really, because, sorry Simon, you know, if you want the right shape for the eyes, the right size for the eyes, doing something like this with the scissors will be very difficult. You'd have to fold a piece of paper, which, you know, and we're not necessarily using this piece, so that's okay. So you need to cut out the facial features as well. The glasses would be easy enough to do with the scissors. Get your nose done, take that up to the glasses so that we'll be able to match the two parts up. And then what you do with the bits and pieces that you've cut out is you decide with your papers what colour you want everything to be, and you just lay this onto the paper and draw around it. And then cut that shape out, so you're left with that. You decide then what colour background you're going to use, and then you start building the components that you've cut out. And it could be quite nice to use little parts of your photograph as well. I think that's quite effective. So if you lay that on there, then that's the neck part of Simon's jumper. So you could lay that on there. And then the head gets positioned in there. So you gradually build. Now you could use these little bits as well if you wanted. A bit Monty Python, but more Dada, you know, why not? So, you know, you could use bits like that, or again, you could put these on different types of papers and cut them out and stick them on. So I've got all my components cut out and I'm going to start gluing them down now. Chosen my background, nice bright red one. I always have a piece of scrap by my side as well when I'm gluing, so that slide it underneath the piece that I'm working on so that I don't get the cutting mat or whatever surface I'm using all sticky and messed up. Make sure you get right into the corners as well so that nothing curls up. It's important to stick everything down properly. So that's that bit of the top done. And then I'm actually going to use the actual bit of the photograph that I cut off for the next bit. That's that bit. I've kept the bits from the head so that I can position everything in the right place. Although you don't have to do that. Like I mentioned earlier, you could abstract this if you wanted to, or you could do one so that's quite representational to start off with, and then produce an abstract one after that. So we just keep gluing all the components and then laying them in place. I'm going to use this bit here just to find the location of the glasses. As I said, you don't have to keep it realistic if you don't want. You can do something Dada, something Picasso. You can play with abstraction and moving things around. Now I've kept the pieces from the photograph, so you could put those in, or you could put a piece that you've cut out We'll do the nose next. Let's have a look what it looks like with the actual one from the photograph. And then let's try it with the thicker stripe. Oh, I quite like that. It's a little bit more creative. You see, if you put the actual bit of the photograph in there, you've either got that or you've got that. Oh, I quite like the piece from the photograph, I think, for this one. So let's get the approximate positioning of that right. Yeah, starting to build quite nicely. And then again, we've got the eyes from the photograph. Or we've got ones that I've cut out from some coloured paper. These are a bit fiddly. You could use one of each. You could use two of the same. Quite like that, actually, one of each. So we'll stick those on. So that's starting to build quite nicely. As I said earlier, you could leave it as a pure collage, or there's another one that I've been playing around with where I use the black felt pen and the Sharpie, the thicker and the thinner ones, to draw a bit more of an outline around it. So two very different effects from the same process. And there you go, just to remind you, that's the photograph of Simon that I've worked from. So that's a couple of different ways that I've explored this quick and easy method of making a collage with Simon's photograph. Next we'll move on to Mair Gruffydd. Now here's the collage I made out of Mair Gruffydd's photo. I took a different approach with this one again. Instead of having the ground card portrait, I turned it landscape. And I left this one featureless, but then I had a look at the logo for Mair's charity walk, and it's really lovely, so I thought I'd add that on as a hint at who this was a portrait of. So, you know, it says so much more about someone when you show something like a logo from a business or a charity that they run, and that's also sort of very poignant within a portrait. So working from this original photograph, I got some of the bits and pieces there that I've cut up, I've kept then for future development of ideas. Not only have I produced this little collage, I've done a mixed media pen and wash portrait of Mair as well. And then just to remind you, with Simon, there's the original photograph, the bits cut out. That's one of the collages I made. There's another one, and then this was just an initial playing around with ideas, and I've put these in a Polly Pocket and used some string to tie them into my sketchbook, so they're all in a safe place. I can lay my hands on them straight away, and then this then becomes a nice record of the whole project. So thanks for watching. There's going to be a short survey at the end, if you wouldn't mind filling that in for us, please. And we'd really love to see some of you having a go at some of these materials and techniques. So, you know, if you have a go, please do post your pictures, send them to us, tag us in them. It'll be great to see what you do. Thanks very much. See you again soon. Keep safe. Bye.